I was playing, Lane?
I didn't think it polite to listen, sir.
Oh, I am sorry for your sake. I don't play accurately. Anyone can play accurately, but I play with wonderful expression. As far as piano is concerned, sentiment is my forte. I keep the science for life.
Yes, sir.
And speaking of the science of life, have you got those cucumber sandwiches for Lady Bracknell?
Yes, sir.
And by the way, Len, I noticed from your book that last Thursday, when Dr. Shorman and Mr. Worthing dined with me, 8 bottles of champagne are down as having been consumed.
Yes, sir. 8 bottles and a pint.
Why is it that in a bachelor's establishment the servants invariably drink the champagne? I simply ask for information.
I attribute it to the superior quality of the wine, sir. I've often noticed in married households the champagne is rarely of a first-rate brand.
Dear me, do you mean to say married life is really as ghastly as that?
Oh, I believe it's a very pleasant state, sir. I haven't had much experience of it myself. I have only been married once. That was in consequence of a misunderstanding between myself and a young person.
I don't think I much care to hear about your family life, Lane.
No, sir. It's not very interesting. I never think about it myself.
Quite right, I'm sure. That will do, Lane. Thank you. Lane's views on marriage are somewhat lax, really. The lower orders can't serve as a good example, then what's the use of them? As a class, they have absolutely no moral responsibility.
Mr. Ernest Worthing.
Ah, Ernest, old boy, what brings you to town?
Oh, pleasure, pleasure. What else should bring one anywhere? Eating as usual, I see, Auntie.
I believe it is customary in polite society to take some light refreshment at 5 o'clock. Where have you been since Thursday?
In the country.
What on earth do you do there?
When one is in town, one amuses oneself. When one is in the country, one amuses other people. It is excessively boring.
And who are these people that you amuse?
Oh, neighbours, neighbours.
What good neighbours in that part of Shropshire have you?
Perfectly horrid. Never speak to one of them.
Then how immensely you must amuse them. By the way, Shropshire is your county, is it not?
Eh? Shropshire? Yes, of course. Hello. Why all these cups? Why cucumber sandwiches? Why such reckless extravagance in one so young? Who is coming to tea?
No, merely Aunt Augusta and Gwendolen.
How perfectly delightful.
Yes, well, I don't think Aunt Augusta will much approve of your being here.
May I ask why?
My dear boy, the way they flirt with Gwendolen is perfectly scandalous. It's almost as bad as the way that Gwendolen flirts with you.
I am in love with Gwendolen. I have come up to town expressly to propose to her.
I thought you said you were here on pleasure. That sounds like business.
How utterly unromantic you are.
I don't see anything romantic about proposing. Perfectly romantic being in love, but I don't see anything romantic about a definite proposal. Why, one might be accepted. One usually is, I find. And then after that, all the excitement is gone. The very essence of romance is uncertainty. If I ever try to get married, I shall certainly try to forget the fact.
I have no doubt about that, dear Algy. The divorce court was specially invented for people whose memories are so curiously constituted.
There's no use speculating on the subject. Divorces were made in heaven. Please don't touch the cucumber sandwiches. They've been specially ordered for Aunt Augusta.
Well, you have been eating them all the time.
Well, that's quite different. She's my aunt. Have some bread and butter. And the bread and butter is for Gwendolen. Gwendolen is devoted to bread and butter.
And very good bread and butter it is too.
Yes, well, you needn't eat it as if you were going to eat it all. You behave as if you were married already. You are not married, and I don't think you ever shall be.
Why on earth do you say that?
Well, in the first case, girls never marry the men they flirt with. Girls don't think it right.
No, that is nonsense.
No, it isn't. It accounts for the extraordinary number of bachelors one sees abound these days. In the second case, I don't give my consent.
Your consent?
You're forgetting that Gwendolen is my first cousin. Before I can allow the two of you to marry, we must first clear up the matter of Sicily.
Sicily? What on earth do you mean? What do you mean, Algy, by Sicily? I don't know anyone of the name of Sicily.
Please bring me the cigarette case that Mr. Worthing left here in the smoking room when he dined here last.
Yes, sir.
Do you mean to say you've had my cigarette case all this time? I wish to goodness you would let me know. I've been writing frantic letters to Scotland Yard about it. I was very nearly offering a large reward.
Well, I really wish you would. I'm more than usually hard up at the moment.
There is no good offering a large reward now that the thing is found.
I think that rather mean of you. No matter. Now that I look at the inscription, I find that the thing isn't yours after all.
Of course it's mine. You've seen me with it 100 times, and you have no right whatsoever to read what is written inside. It's a very ungentlemanly thing to read a private cigarette case.
Oh, it's absurd to have a hard and fast rule about what one should read and what one shouldn't. All of modern culture is built on what one shouldn't read.
I am quite aware of the fact, and I don't propose to discuss modern culture. It isn't the sort of thing one should talk of in private. I simply want my cigarette case back.
Yes, but this isn't your cigarette case. This cigarette case is a present from someone by the name of Cicely, and you said you didn't know anyone of that name.
Well, if you want to know, Cicely happens to be my aunt.
Your aunt?
Yes. Charming old lady she is too. Lives at Tunbridge Wells. Just give it back to me, Algy.
Why does she call herself Little Cicely if she is your aunt and lives in Tunbridge Wells? From Little Cicely with fondest love.
My dear fellow, what on earth is there in that? Some aunts are tall, some aunts are not tall. That is a matter that surely an aunt may be allowed to decide for herself. You seem to think that all aunts should be exactly like your aunt. That is absurd. For heaven's sake, give me back my cigarette case.
Why does she call you her uncle? If she is your aunt who lives in Tunbridge Wells, from Little Cicely with the fondest love for her dear Uncle Jack. My dear boy, I have no objection with an aunt being small, but why an aunt, no matter what her size, would call her own nephew her uncle, I can't quite make out. Besides, your name isn't Jack, it's Ernest.
It isn't Ernest. It's Jack.
But you have always told me it was Ernest. I've introduced you to everyone as Ernest. You answer to the name of Ernest. You look as if your name is Ernest. You're the most earnest-looking man I've ever met. It's absurd to say that your name isn't Ernest. Look, it's on your cards. Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany W. I shall keep this as proof that your name is Ernest, should whoever try to deceive it to me, or to Gwendolen, or to anyone else.
Well, my name is Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Yes.
And the cigarette case was given to me in the country.
Yes, but that doesn't account for the fact that your small aunt Cicely calls you her uncle. Come on, old boy, I think you'd better have the whole thing out at once.
My dear Algy, you talk exactly as if you were a dentist. It's very vulgar to talk like a dentist when one isn't a dentist. It produces a false impression.
That's exactly what dentists always do. Now, come on, tell me the whole thing. I must admit, I've always suspected you of being a bumberist, and now I'm quite sure of it.
Bumberist? What on earth do you mean by a bumberist?
I shall explain the meaning of that incomparable term as soon as you explain to me why you are Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
Well, produce my cigarette case first.
Here it is. Now go on. Tell me the whole thing, and pray make it improbable.
Oh, my dear fellow, there is nothing improbable about my explanation at all. In fact, it is perfectly ordinary. Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, who adopted me when I was a little boy, made me in his will guardian to his granddaughter, Miss Cicely Cardew. Cicely, who addresses me as her uncle from motives of respect you could not possibly appreciate, lives at my place in the country under the charge of her admirable governess, Miss Prison.
Where is that place in the country?
That is nothing to you, dear boy. You are not going to be invited. I can tell you candidly that the place is not in Shropshire.
I thought as much. I bumbered all over Shropshire on no less than 2 occasions. Now go on, tell me why you're Ernest in town and Jack in the country.
My dear Algy, I don't know whether you will be able to understand my real motives. You are hardly serious enough. When one is placed in the position of guardian, one has to adopt a very high moral tone on all subjects. It's one's duty to do so. And as a very high moral tone can hardly be said to conduce much to either one's health or one's happiness, in order to get up to town, I have always pretended to have a younger brother of the name of Ernest, who lives in the Albany and gets into the most dreadful scrapes. That, my dear Algy, is the whole truth, pure and simple.
The truth is rarely pure and never simple. If it was, modern life would be rather tedious, and modern literature a complete impossibility.
That would not be at all a bad thing.
Oh, literary criticism is not your forte. Please don't try it. Leave that to people that haven't been to university. They do it so well in the daily papers. What you are is a Bunburyist. I was quite right in suspecting you are a Bunburyist. You're one of the most advanced Bunburyists I've ever met.
What on earth do you mean?
You have invented yourself a rather useful younger brother by the name of Ernest in order that you can run off to town whenever you choose. I have invented myself an invaluable permanent invalid by the name of Bunbury in order that I can escape off to the country whenever I please. Bunbury is perfectly invaluable. If it wasn't for Bunbury's extraordinarily bad health, I wouldn't be able to dine with you at Willis's tonight, for I have in fact been engaged to Aunt Augusta for more than a week.
I haven't asked you to dine anywhere with me tonight.
No, I know you haven't. You're very careless about giving out invitations. It's very foolish of you. Nothing annoys people more than not receiving invitations.
You had much better dine with your Aunt Augusta.
I haven't the slightest intention of doing anything of the sort. In the first case, I dine there on Monday night, and once a week is more than enough to dine with one's own relatives. In the second case, whenever I do dine there, I'm treated as if I'm a member of the family, and sent down with either no woman at all, or two. And in the third case, I know exactly who she will place me next to tonight. She'll place me next to Mary Farquhar, a woman who flirts with her own husband across the dinner table. That sort of thing isn't pleasant. Why, it's not even decent. And that sort of thing is enormously on the uprise. The amount of women that flirt with their own husbands in London is perfectly scandalous. It just looks so bad. It's like washing one's clean linen in public. Besides, now that I know that you're a Bunburyist, naturally I want to talk to you all about Bunburying. I want to tell you the rules.
I am not a Bunburyist at all. If Gwendolen accepts me, I'm going to kill my brother. Indeed, I think I shall kill him in any case. Cicely is a little too much interested in him. It is rather a bore. So, I'm going to get rid of the Burgess, and I strongly advise you to do the same with with your invalid friend who has the absurd name.
Nothing will induce me to get rid of Bunbury. And if you ever get married, which seems to me rather problematic, you'd be glad to know Bunbury. A married man who doesn't know Bunbury has a rather tedious time of it.
Oh, that is nonsense. If I marry a charming girl like Gwendolen, and she is the only girl I ever saw in my life that I would marry, I certainly won't want to know Bunbury.
And your wife will. You don't seem to realise that in married life, 3 is company and 2 is none.
My dear young friend, that is the theory the corrupt French drama has been propounding for the last 50 years.
Yes, and the happy English home has proved in half the time.
Oh, for heaven's sake, don't try to be cynical. It's perfectly easy to be cynical.
It isn't. It's indeed easy to be anything nowadays. There's so much ghastly competition about. Oh, that will be Aunt Augusta. Only relatives and creditors ring in that Wagnerian manner. Now, if I get Aunt Augusta out of the way for 10 minutes in order that you have the opportunity to propose to Gwendolen, will you allow me to dine with you at Willis's tonight?
I suppose so, if you want to.
Yes, as long as you're serious about it. I can't abide people that aren't serious about meals. It's just so shallow of them.
Lady Bracknell and Miss Fairfax.
Good afternoon, dear Algernon. I hope you are behaving very well.
I am feeling very well, Aunt Augusta.
That's not quite the same thing. In fact, the two things rarely go together.
Oh my, don't you look smart?
I am always smart. Am I not, Mr. Worthing?
You are quite perfect, Miss Fairfax.
Oh, I hope I am not that. It would leave no room for developments, and I intend to develop in many directions.
I'm sorry if we are a little late, Algernon, but I was obliged to call on dear Lady Carberry. I hadn't been there since her poor husband's death. I never saw a woman so altered. She looks quite 20 years younger. And now I'll have a cup of tea and one of those nice cucumber sandwiches you promised me. Won't you come and sit here, Gwendolen?
Thanks, Mamma. I'm quite comfortable where I am.
Lane, what happened to the cucumber sandwiches? I ordered them specially.
There were no cucumbers to be had in the market this morning, sir. I went down twice.
No cucumbers?
No, sir, not even for ready money.
That will do, Lane, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm very sorry about there being no cucumbers, Aunt Augusta. Not even for ready money.
It really makes no matter, Algernon. I had some crumpets with Lady Harbury. who seems to me to be living entirely for pleasure now.
I hear her hair has turned quite gold from grief.
It certainly has changed its colour. From what cause, I, of course, cannot say. Thank you. I've such a treat for you tonight, Algernon. I'm going to send you down with Mary Farquhar. She's such a nice woman, and so attentive to her husband. It's delightful to watch them.
I'm afraid that I will have to give up the pleasure of dining with you tonight after all, Aunt Augusta.
I hope not, Algernon. It would put my table completely out. Your uncle will have to dine upstairs. Fortunately, he is accustomed to that.
It's a dreadful bore, and needless to say, a great disappointment to me, but you see, I've had a telegram from my friend Bunbury. He's rather ill again. They seem to think that I should be with him.
It's very strange. This Mr. Bunbury seems to suffer from curiously bad health.
Yes, Bunbury is a dreadful invalid.
Well, I must say, Algernon, I think it's high time that Mr. Bunbury made up his mind whether he was going to live or to die. This shilly-shallying of the business is quite absurd. Health is the primary duty of life. I'm always telling that to your poor uncle, but he never seems to take any notice. As far as any improvement in his health is concerned, I should be much obliged if you would ask Mr. Bunbury from me to be kind enough not to have a relapse on Saturday, for I rely on you to arrange my music for me. It is my last reception, and one wants something that will encourage conversation, particularly at the end of the season, when one has said practically everything they had to say, which in most cases was probably not much.
I should speak to Bunbury, Aunt Augusta, if he is conscious. But I think I can say that he'll be all right by Saturday. As for the music, you see, there lies the trouble. If one plays good music, people don't listen. And if one plays bad music, people don't talk. I will run through the programme I set up with you if you would kindly join me in the next room.
Very thoughtful, you, Algernon. I'm sure the programme will be delightful. After a few explications. French songs I cannot possibly allow. People seem to think they are improper and look shocked or laugh, which is worse. But German sounds a particularly, thoroughly respectable language, and indeed, I believe is so. Gwendolen, you will accompany me?
Certainly, Mamma.
Mr. Mendelssohn's tones.
Charming day it has been, Miss Fairfax.
Pray, don't talk to me about the weather, Mr. Worthing. Whenever people talk to me about the weather, I always feel quite certain that they mean something else. And that makes me so nervous.
I do mean something else.
I thought so. In fact, I am never wrong.
And I would like to be allowed to take advantage of Lady Bracknell's temporary absence.
I would certainly advise you to do so. Mamma has a way of coming back suddenly into a room that I have often had to speak to her about.
Miss Fairfax, ever since I met you, I have admired you more than any girl I ever met since I met you.
Yes, I am quite well aware of the fact. And I often wish that in public, at any rate, you had been more demonstrative. For me, you have always had an irresistible fascination. Even before I met you, I was far from indifferent to you. We live, as I hope you know, Mr. Worthing, in an age of ideals. The fact is constantly mentioned in the more expensive monthly magazines and has reached the provincial pulpits, I am told. And my ideal has always been to love someone with the name of Ernest. There's something in that name that inspires absolute confidence. The moment Algernon first mentioned to me that he had a friend called Ernest, I knew I was destined to love you.
You really love me, Gwendolen?
Passionately.
Darling, you don't know how happy you've made me.
My own Ernest.
But you don't really mean to say you couldn't love me if my name wasn't Ernest.
But your name is Ernest.
Yes, I know it is. But supposing it was something else, do you mean to say you couldn't love me then?
Ah, that is clearly a metaphysical speculation. And like most metaphysical speculations, has very little reference at all to the actual facts of real life, as we know them.
Well, personally, darling, to speak quite candidly, I don't much care about the name of Ernest. I don't think it suits me at all.
It suits you perfectly. It is a divine name. It has a music of its own. It produces Vibrations.
Well, really, Gwendolen, I must say I think there are lots of other much nicer names. Well, I think Jack, for instance, a charming name.
Jack. 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 Oh no. There is very little music in the name Jack, if any at all, indeed. It does not thrill. It produces absolutely no vibrations. I have known several Jacks, and they all, without exception, are more than usually plain. Besides, Jack is a notorious domesticity for John. I pity any poor woman who is married to a man called John. She would probably never be allowed to know the entrancing pleasure of a single moment's solitude. The only really safe name is Ernest.
Gwendolen, I must get christened at once. I mean, we must be married at once. There is no time to be lost.
Married, Mr. Worthing?
Well, surely you know that I love you, and you led me to believe, Miss Fairfax, that you were not absolutely indifferent to me.
I adore you, but you haven't proposed to me yet. Nothing has been said at all about marriage. The subject has not even been touched on.
Well, may I propose to you now?
I think that would be an admirable opportunity. To spare you any possible disappointment, Mr. Worthing, I think it only fair to tell you quite frankly beforehand that I am fully determined to accept.
Oh, Gwendolen!
Yes, Mr. Worthing? What have you got to say to me?
You know what I've got to say to you.
Yes, but you don't say it.
Gwendolen, will you marry me?
Of course I will, darling. How long you have been about it. I'm afraid you have had very little experience in how to propose.
My own one. I've never loved anyone in the world but you.
Yes, but men often propose for practice. I know my brother Gerald does. My girlfriends tell me so. What wonderfully blue eyes you have, Ernest. They're quite blue. I hope you will always look at me just like that, especially when there are other people present.
Mr. Worthing, the rise, sir, from this semi-recumbent posture. It is most indecorous.
Mamma, I must beg you to retire. This is no place for you. Besides, Mr. Worthing is not quite finished yet.
Finished what, may I ask?
I am engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Pardon me, you're not engaged to anyone. Should you become engaged to someone, I or your father, should his health permit, will inform you of the fact. An engagement should come on a young girl as a surprise, pleasant or unpleasant as the case may be. It is hardly a matter she could be allowed to arrange for herself. And now I have some questions to put to you, Mr. Worthing. While I'm making these inquiries, you, Gwendolen, will wait for me below in the carriage.
Mamma!
In the carriage, Gwendolen. Gwendolen, the carriage.
Yes, Mamma.
You may take a seat, Mr. Worthing.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell. I prefer standing.
I feel bound to tell you that you're not down on my list of eligible young men. Although I have to say, Mr. a dear Duchess of Bolton has. We work together, in fact. However, I'm quite willing to add your name, should your answers be what a really affectionate mother requires. Do you smoke?
Well, yes, I must admit I smoke.
I'm glad to hear it. A man should always have an occupation of some kind. There are far too many idle men in London as it is. How old are you?
29.
A very good age to be married at. I have always been of opinion that a man who desires to get married should know either everything or nothing. Which do you know?
I know nothing, Lady Bracknell.
I'm pleased to hear it. I do not agree with anything that interferes with ignorance. Ignorance is like a delicate, exotic fruit. Touch it and the bloom is gone. The whole theory of modern education is radically unsound. Fortunately, in England at any rate, education produces no effect whatsoever. If it did, it would prove a serious danger to the upper classes and probably lead to acts of violence in Grosvenor Square. What is your income?
Between 7,000 and 8,000 a year.
In land or in investments?
In investments, chiefly.
That is satisfactory. What with the duties expected from one during one's lifetime and the duties exacted from one after one's death, land has ceased to become either a profit or a pleasure. It gives one a position and prevents one from keeping it up. That is all that can be said about land.
I have a country house with some land, of course, attached to it. About 1,500 acres, I believe. But I don't depend on that for my real income. In fact, as far as I can make out, the poachers are the only people who make anything out of it.
A country house. How many bedrooms? Oh, well, that point can be cleared up afterwards. You have a townhouse, I hope. A girl with a simple, unspoiled nature like a Gwendolen can hardly be expected to reside in the country.
I own a house in Belgrave Square, but it is let by the year to Lady Blossom. Of course, I can get it back whenever I like, at 6 months' notice.
Lady Blossom. I don't know her.
Oh, she goes about very little. She is a lady considerably advanced in years.
Yeah, that is no guarantee of respectability of character nowadays. What number in Belgrave Square?
149.
The unfashionable side. I thought there was something. However, that can easily be altered.
Do you mean the fashion or the side?
Both, if necessary, I presume. What are your politics?
I am afraid I really have none. I am a liberal unionist.
They count as Tories. They dine with us or come round in the evening at any rate. Now to minor matters. Are your parents living?
I have lost both my parents.
To lose one parent may be regarded as a misfortune. To lose both looks like carelessness. Who was your father? He was evidently a man of great wealth. Was he born in what the radical papers call the purple of commerce? Or did he rise in the ranks of the aristocracy?
I'm afraid I really don't know. The fact is, Lady Bracknell, I said I had lost my parents. It would be nearer the truth to say my parents seem to have lost me. I don't actually know who I am by birth. I was found.
Found?
Old Mr. Thomas Cardew, a very charitable and kindly man, found me and gave me the name of Worthing because he happened to have a first-class ticket to Worthing in his pocket at the time. Worthing is a place in Sussex. It is a seaside resort.
Where did the charitable gentleman with a first-class ticket to this seaside resort find you?
In a handbag.
In a handbag?
Yes, Lady Bracknell, I was in a handbag. A somewhat large black leather handbag with handles to it. Well, an ordinary handbag, in fact.
In what locality did this Mr. James or Thomas Cardew come across this ordinary handbag?
In the cloakroom at Victoria Station. It was given to him in mistake for his own.
The cloakroom at Victoria Station?
Yes, the Brighton line.
The line is immaterial. Mr. Worthing, I find myself bewildered by what you have just told me. To be born, or at any rate bred in a handbag, whether it had handles or not, seems to me to display a contempt for the ordinary decencies of family life that remind one of the worst excesses of the French Revolution, and I presume you know what that unfortunate movement led to. As for the particular locality in which the handbag was found, a cloakroom at a railway station might serve to conceal a social indiscretion, and probably indeed has done that in the past. But it can hardly be regarded as an assured basis for a recognised position in good society.
May I ask you then, what do you advise me to do? I need hardly say I would do anything in the world to ensure Gwendolen's happiness.
I would strongly advise you, Mr. Worthing, to try and acquire some relations as soon as possible. To make a definite effort to produce at any rate one parent of either sex before the season is quite over.
I don't see how I could possibly manage to do that. I can produce the handbag at any moment. It is in my dressing room at home. I really think that should satisfy you, Lady Bracknell.
Me, sir? What has it to do with me? You can hardly expect I, or Lord Bracknell, would allow our only daughter, a girl brought up with the utmost care, To marry into a cloakroom and form an alliance with a parcel? Good morning, Mr. Worthing.
Good morning. For heaven's sake, don't play that ghastly tune out here! How idiotic you are!
What's the matter, old boy? Didn't you go off all right? You don't mean to say that she refused you? With the way she has, she's always refusing people. I think it quite ill-natured of her.
Oh, Gwendolen is as right as a trivet. As far as she is concerned, we are engaged. Her mother is perfectly unbearable. Never met such a gorgon. I don't quite know what a gorgon is like, but I'm sure Lady Bracknell is one. In any case, she is a monster without being a myth, which is rather unfair. Oh, I beg your pardon, Algy. I suppose I shouldn't talk about your own aunt in that way before you.
I love hearing my relations abused. It's the only reason I put up with them. Relations are simply a tedious bunch of people that have absolutely no knowledge of how to live and no instinct of when to die.
Oh, that is nonsense.
No, it isn't.
Well, I won't argue about the matter. You always want to argue about things.
Well, that's what things were originally made for.
Oh, upon my word, if I thought that, I'd shoot myself. You don't think there's any chance of Gwendolen becoming like her mother in about 150 years, do you, Algy?
All women become like their mothers. That's their tragedy. No man does, and that's his.
Is that clever?
It's perfectly phrased, and about as true as any observation in modern life should be.
I am sick to death of cleverness. Everybody is clever nowadays. You can't go anywhere without meeting clever people. The whole thing has become an absolute public nuisance. I wish to goodness we had a few fools left.
We have.
I would extremely like to meet them. What do they talk about?
The fools. Oh, about the clever people, of course.
What fools?
And by the way, did you tell Gwendolen the truth about your being Ernest in town and Jack in the country?
My dear fellow, the truth isn't quite the sort of thing one tells to a nice, sweet, refined girl. What extraordinary ideas you have about the way to behave to a woman.
The only way to behave towards a woman is to make love to her if she's pretty, or to someone else if she's plain.
No, that is nonsense.
And what about your brother, the profligate Ernest?
Oh, before the end of the week I shall have got rid of him. I'll say he died in Paris of apoplexy. Lots of people die quite suddenly of apoplexy, don't they?
Yes, but it's hereditary, old boy. It's the kind of thing that runs in families. You're better off saying that he died of a severe chill.
You are sure a severe chill is not hereditary or anything of that kind?
Oh, of course it isn't.
Very well then. My poor brother Ernest is carried off suddenly in Paris with a severe chill. That gets rid of him.
But I thought you said that Miss Cardew was growing a little too fond of him. Won't you feel his loss a great deal?
Oh, that's all right. Cicely is not a silly romantic girl, I'm glad to say. She has a capital appetite, goes long walks and pays absolutely no attention to her lessons.
I'd rather like to meet this Cicely.
I will take very good care you never do. She is excessively pretty and only just 18.
And does Gwendolen know about your excessively pretty ward who was only just 18?
Oh, one doesn't blurt these things out to people. Cicely and Gwendolen are perfectly certain to be extremely great friends. I bet you anything like that half an hour after they've met, they will be calling each other sister.
Women only do that after they've called each other a lot of other things first. Now, if we're going to get a good table at Willis's, we should probably go and dress. Do you know that it's nearly 7?
No, it's always nearly 7.
Well, I'm hungry.
I never knew you when you weren't.
What should we do after dinner? Go to the theatre?
Oh no, I loathe listening.
Well, then why don't we go to the club?
Oh no, I hate talking.
And why don't we stroll around the Empire at 10?
Oh no, I can't bear looking at things, it's so silly.
And what shall we do?
Nothing.
Oh, it's awfully hard work doing nothing. Although, I don't mind hard work if there's absolutely no object of any kind.
Miss Fairfax?
Gwendolen, upon my word!
Algy, kindly turn your back. I have something very particular to say to Mr. Worthing.
Gwendolen, I don't think I much approve of this.
Algy, you always adopt a strictly immoral attitude to life. You're not quite old enough to do that.
My own darling.
Ernest, we may never be married. From the expression on Mamma's face, I fear we never shall. Few parents nowadays pay any regard to what their children say to them. The old-fashioned respect for the young is fast dying out. Any influence I had over Mamma I lost at the age of 3. But although she may prevent us from becoming man and wife, and I may marry someone else, and marry often, nothing she can possibly do can alter my eternal devotion to you.
Dear Gwendolen.
The story of your romantic origin, as related to me by Mamma with unpleasing comments, naturally stirred the deeper fibres of my nature. Your Christian name has an irresistible fascination. The simplicity of your character makes you exquisitely incomprehensible to me. Your town address at the Albany I have. What is your address in the country?
The Manor House, Walton, Hertfordshire.
There is a good postal service, I suppose? It may become necessary to do something desperate. That, of course, will require serious consideration. I will communicate with you daily.
My own darling.
How long do you remain in town?
Till Monday.
Good. Algy, you may turn round now.
Thanks, I've turned around already.
You may also ring the bell.
You will let me see to your carriage, my own darling?
Certainly.
I will see Miss Fairfax out.
Yes, sir.
A glass of sherry, Lane.
Yes.
I'm going bumbering tomorrow, Lane.
Yes.
I shan't be back until Monday.
Yes.
You can pack my dress suit, my smoking jacket, and all the Bunbury suits.
Yes.
I hope tomorrow shall be a fine day, Lane.
Oh, it never is, sir.
What a perfect pessimist you are, Lane.
I do my best to give satisfaction.
There's a sensible, intellectual girl. The only girl I ever cared for in my life. What on earth are you so amused at?
Me? Oh, I'm just terribly worried about poor Bunbury, that's all.
If you don't take care, your friend Bunbury will get you into a serious scrape someday.
Well, I love scrapes. They're the only things that are never sins.
Oh, that's nonsense. You never talk anything but nonsense.
Nobody ever does.
Cicely! Cicely, surely such a utilitarian occupation as the watering of flowers is rather Morton's duty than yours, especially when intellectual pleasures await you. Your German grammar is on the table. Pray open it at page 15.
I don't like German. It isn't at all a becoming language. I know perfectly well that I look quite plain after my German lesson.
Child, you know how anxious your guardian is that you should improve yourself in every way. He laid particular stress on your German as he was leaving for town yesterday. Indeed, he always lays stress on your German as he's leaving for town.
Dear Uncle Jack is so very serious. Sometimes I think he is so serious that he cannot be quite well.
Your guardian enjoys the best of health, and his gravity of demeanour is much to be admired in one so comparatively young as he is. I know no one with a higher sense of duty and responsibility.
I suppose that is why he often looks a little bored when we three are together.
Cicely, I am surprised at you. Mr. Worthing has many troubles in his life. Idle merriment and triviality would be out of place in this conversation. You must remember his constant anxiety about that unfortunate young man, his brother.
I wish Uncle Jack would allow that unfortunate young man, his brother, to come down here sometimes. We might have a good influence over him, Miss Prism. I'm sure you certainly would. You know German and geology, and things of that kind influence a man very much.
I'm not sure even I could produce any effect on a young man that, according to his own brother's admission, is irretrievably weak and vacillating. Indeed, I'm not sure I would desire to reclaim him. I am not in favour of this modern mania for turning bad people into good people at a moment's notice. As a man sows, so shall he reap, and you must put away your diary, Cicely. I really don't see why you should keep a diary at all.
I keep a diary in order to enter the wonderful secrets of my life. If I didn't write them down, I should probably forget all about them.
Memory, my dear Cicely, is the diary that we all carry about with us.
Yes, but it usually chronicles of things that have never happened and couldn't possibly have happened. I believe that memory is responsible for nearly all the 3-volume novels that Moody sends us.
Do not speak slightingly of the 3-volume novel, Cicely. I wrote one myself in earlier days.
Did you really, Miss Prism? How wonderfully clever you are. I hope it did not end happily. I don't like novels that end happily. They depress me so much.
The good ended happily and the bad unhappily. That is what fiction means.
I suppose so. But it seems very unfair. And was your novel ever published?
Alas, no. The manuscript, unfortunately, was abandoned. I mean the word in the sense of lost, or mislaid. To your work, child, these speculations are,
But I see dear Dr. Chasuble coming up through the garden.
Dr. Chasuble, this is indeed a pleasure.
And how are we this morning, Miss Prism? You are, I trust, well?
Miss Prism has just been complaining of a slight headache. I think it would do her so much good to have a short stroll with you in the park, Dr. Chasuble.
I did not mention anything about a headache, Cicely.
No, dear Miss Prism, I know that. But I felt instinctively that you had a headache. Indeed, I was thinking about that and not about my German lesson when the rector came in.
I hope, Cicely, you are not inattentive.
Oh, I'm afraid I am.
That is strange. Were I fortunate enough to be Miss Prism's pupil, I would hang upon her lips. I spoke metaphorically. My metaphor was drawn from bees. Mr. Worthing, I suppose, has not returned from town yet.
We do not expect him till Monday afternoon.
Ah, yes. He usually likes to spend his Sunday in London. He is not one of those whose sole aim is enjoyment. As by all accounts, that unfortunate young man his brother seems to be. But I must not disturb Egeria, and hope you will any longer.
Egeria? My name's Letitia, Doctor.
A classical allusion, merely one drawn from the pagan authors. I shall see you both, no doubt, at evensong.
I think, dear Dr. Chasuble, that I will have a stroll with you. I find I have a headache after all, and a walk might do it some good.
With pleasure, Miss Prism, with pleasure. We might go as far as the schools and back.
Oh, that would be delightful. Cicely,
You will read your political economy in my absence. The chapter on the fall of the rupee you may omit. It is somewhat too sensational. It appears that metallic problems have their melodramatic side. Horrid political economy, horrid geography, horrid German.
Mr. Ernest Worthing has driven over from the station and brought his package with him.
Mr. Ernest Worthing, B4, the Albany W. Uncle Jack's brother. Did you tell him Mr. Worthing was in town?
Yes, Mrs. Thank you very much. Take a point. I mentioned that you and Miss Prism were in the garden, and he said he was anxious to speak to you privately for a moment.
Ask Mr. Ernest Worthing to come here. I suppose you had better talk to a housekeeper about a room for him.
Yes, miss.
I've never met any really wicked person before. I feel rather frightened. I was so afraid he would look just like everyone else. He does.
You are my little cousin Cicely, I'm sure.
You are under some strange mistake. I am not little. In fact, I believe I'm more than usually tall for my age. But I am your cousin Cicely. You, I see from your card, are Uncle Jack's brother. My cousin Ernest. My wicked cousin Ernest.
I'm not wicked, cousin Cicely. You mustn't think I'm wicked.
If you're not, then you have certainly been deceiving us all in a very inexcusable manner. I hope you have not been leading a double life, pretending to be wicked and being really good all the time. That would be hypocrisy.
But I suppose I have been rather reckless.
I'm glad to hear it.
And I must admit I have been very bad in my own small way.
I don't think you should be so proud of that, though I'm sure it must have been very pleasant.
It is far pleasanter being here with you.
I can't understand how you are here at all. Uncle Jack won't be back till Monday afternoon.
Yes, that is a great disappointment. I'm obliged to go back up to London on Monday. I have an appointment I'm rather anxious to miss.
Couldn't you miss it anywhere but in London?
No, the appointment is in London.
Well, I know, of course, how important it is not to keep a business engagement if one wants to retain any sense of the beauty of life. But still, I think you had better wait till Uncle Jack arrives. I know he wants to speak with you about your emigrating.
About my what?
You're emigrating. He's come up to buy your outfit.
I wouldn't let Jack choose my outfit. He has no taste in neckties at all.
I don't think you require neckties. Uncle Jack is sending you to Australia.
Australia? I'd sooner die.
Well, he said at dinner on Wednesday night that you would have to choose between this world, the next world, and Australia.
Well, the accounts I've heard of Australia and the next world aren't too promising. No, this world is good enough for me, cousin Cicely.
Yes, but are you good enough for it?
No, I'm afraid not. That's why I was hoping you would reform me. You might make it your mission.
I'm afraid I've no time this afternoon.
Well, then do you mind if I reform myself this afternoon?
It is rather quixotic of you, but I think you should try.
I feel better already.
You're looking a little worse.
That's because I'm hungry.
How thoughtless of me. I should have remembered that when one is going to lead an entirely new life, one requires regular and wholesome meals. Won't you come in?
Might I have a buttonhole first? I never have any appetite unless I have a buttonhole first.
A Marichal here?
No, I'd sooner have a pink rose.
Why?
Because you are like a pink rose, cousin Cicely.
I don't think it can be right for you to talk to me like that. Miss Prism never says such things to me.
Then this prison is a short-sighted old lady. You are the prettiest girl I've ever seen.
Miss Prism says that all good looks are a snare.
A snare that every sensible man would love to be caught in.
Oh, I don't think I would care to catch a sensible man. I shouldn't know what to talk to him about. You are too much alone, dear Dr. Chasuble. You should get married. A misanthrope I can understand, a womanthrope never.
Believe me, I do not deserve so neologistic a phrase. The precept, as well as the practice of the primitive church, was distinctly against matrimony.
That is obviously the reason that the primitive church has not lasted to the present day. And you do not seem to realise, dear Doctor, that by persistently remaining single, man converts himself into a permanent public temptation. Men should be more careful. This very celibacy leads weaker vessels astray.
But is a man not equally attractive when married?
No married man is ever attractive. Except to his wife.
And often I have been told, not even to her.
That depends on the intellectual sympathies of the woman. Maturity can always be relied on. Ripeness can be trusted. Young women agree. I spoke horticulturally. My metaphor was drawn from fruits. But where is Cicely?
Perhaps she followed us to the schools.
Mr. Worthing.
Mr. Worthing?
I have returned sooner than I expected. Dr. Chasuble, I hope you're better.
Dear Mr. Worthing, I trust this garb of woe does not betoken some terrible calamity.
My brother.
More shameful depths and extravagance.
Still leading his life of pleasure.
Dead.
Your brother Ernest dead?
Quite dead.
What a lesson for him. I trust
Mr. Worthing, I offer you my sincere condolence. You have at least the consolation of knowing that you are always the most generous and forgiving of brothers.
Poor Ernest. He had many faults, but it is a sad, sad blow.
Very sad indeed. Were you with him at the end?
No, he died abroad. In Paris, in fact. I had a telegram last night from the manager at the Grand Hotel.
Was the cause of death mentioned?
A severe chill, it seems.
As a man sows, so shall he reap.
Charity, dear Miss Prism, charity. None of us are perfect. I myself am peculiarly susceptible to drafts. Will the intern take place here?
No, he seems to have expressed a desire to be buried in Paris.
In Paris? I fear that hardly points to any serious state of mind at the last. You will no doubt wish me to make some slight allusion to this tragic domestic affliction next Sunday. My sermon on the meaning of the manna in the wilderness can be adapted to almost any occasion. Joyful, or as in the present case, tragic. I have preached it at harvest celebrations, christenings, confirmations, on days of humiliation, and festal days. The last time I delivered it was in the cathedral, as a charity sermon on behalf of the Society for the Prevention of Discontent among the upper orders. The bishop who was present was much struck by some of the analogies that I drew.
You mentioned christenings, I think, Dr. Chasuble. I suppose you know how to christen all right? Oh, of course. I mean, you are continually christening, aren't you?
It is, I regret to say, one of the rector's most constant duties in the parish. I've often spoken to the poorer classes on the subject, but they don't seem to know what thrift is.
But is there any particular infant you have in mind, Mr. Worthing? Your brother was, I believe, unmarried, was he not?
Oh, yes.
People who live entirely for pleasure usually are.
But it is not for any child, dear Doctor. I'm very fond of children. No, I would like to be christened myself this afternoon if you have nothing better to do.
But surely, Mr. Worthing, you have been christened already.
I don't remember anything about it.
But have you any grave doubts on the subject?
I certainly intend to have. Of course, I don't know if the thing would bother you or if you think I am a little too old now.
Not at all. The sprinkling, and indeed the immersion of adults, is perfectly canonical practice.
Immersion?
You need have no apprehensions. Sprinkling is all that is necessary, or indeed I think advisable. Our weather is so changeable. At the hour would you wish the ceremony performed?
I thought I might trot by about 5 if that would suit you.
Perfectly, perfectly. Indeed, I have 2 similar ceremonies performed at that time. Cases of twins that occurred recently in one of the outlying cottages on your own estate. Poor Jenkins the carter. A most hard-working man.
Oh, I don't see much fun in being christened along with other babies. It would be childish. Would 5:30 do?
Admirably, admirably. And now, dear Mr. Worthing, I will not intrude any longer into a house of sorrow. I would merely beg that you not be too much bowed down by grief. What seem to us bitter trials are often blessings in disguise.
This seems to me a blessing of an extremely obvious kind. Uncle Jack! Oh, I'm so pleased to see you back. But what horrid clothes you have got on. Do go and change them. Cicely!
My child, my child.
Uncle Jack, what is the matter? Do look happy. You look as if you had toothache, and I have got such a surprise for you. Who do you think is in the dining room? Your brother.
Who?
Your brother, Ernest. He arrived about half an hour ago.
What nonsense. I haven't got a brother.
Oh, don't say that. However badly he may have behaved to you in the past, he is still your brother. You couldn't be so heartless as to disown him. I'll tell him to come out. And you will shake hands with him, won't you, Uncle Jack?
These are very joyful tidings.
After we'd all been resigned to his loss, his sudden return seems to me particularly distressing.
My brother is in the dining room. I don't know what it all means. I think it's perfectly absurd. Good heavens!
Brother John, I have come all the way down from town expressly to tell you how sorry I am for all the trouble I've caused you, and that I intend to lead a better life in the future.
Uncle Jack, you're not going to refuse your own brother's hand?
Nothing will induce me to take his hand. I think he's coming down here disgraceful. He knows perfectly well why.
Uncle Jack, do be nice. There is some good in everyone. Ernest has just been telling me about his poor invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, whom he goes to visit so often. And surely there must be much good in one who is kind to an invalid and leaves the pleasures of London to sit by a bed of pain.
Oh, he has been talking about Bunbury, has he?
Yes, he has told me all about poor Mr. Bunbury and his terrible state of health.
Bunbury? Well, I won't have him talk to you about Bunbury or about anything else. It's enough to drive one perfectly frantic.
While I admit that all fault is my own, I must say I find it peculiarly painful of Brother John's coldness, particularly as this is the first time I have ever come here.
Uncle Jack, if you don't shake hands with Ernest, I will never forgive you.
Never forgive me?
Never, never, never.
Well, this is the last time I will ever do it.
It is pleasant, is it not, to see so perfect a reconciliation? I think we might leave the two brothers together.
Cicely, you'll go with us. Certainly, Miss Prism. My little task of reconciliation is over.
You have done a beautiful action today here, dear child.
We must not be premature in our judgments.
I feel very happy.
You young scoundrel, Archie! You must get out of this place as soon as possible. I don't allow any bumbering here.
Put Mr. Ernest's things in the room next to your own, sir. I suppose that's all right.
What?
Mr. Ernest's luggage, sir. I've unpacked it and put it in the room next to your own.
His luggage?
Yes, sir. 3 portmanteaus, a dressing case, 2 hat boxes, a large picnic basket.
I can't stay more than a week this time.
Merriman, order the dog cart at once. Mr. Ernest has been suddenly called back to town.
What a frightful liar you are, Jack. I haven't been called back to town.
Yes, you have.
I didn't hear anyone call me.
Your duty as a gentleman calls you back.
My duty as a gentleman has never interfered in my pleasures to the smallest degree.
I have no doubt about that.
Well, Cicely is darling.
I will not have you talk about Miss Cardew like that. I don't like it.
Well, I don't like your clothes. You look perfectly ridiculous. Do go up and change. It's very childish to be in deep mourning for someone who is in fact staying in your house for a week as a guest. I call it grotesque.
You are certainly not staying in my house for a week as a guest or as anything else. You have got to leave by the 4:05 train.
But I certainly won't leave you while you're in mourning. That would be very unfriendly of me, wouldn't it? If I were in mourning, you would stay with me, I suppose. I'd think it very unkind if you didn't.
Well, will you go if I change my clothes?
Yes, as long as you're quick about it. I haven't met anyone who takes so long about dressing with such little result.
Well, at any rate, that is better than being always overdressed as you are.
If I am occasionally slightly overdressed, I make up for it by always being immensely overeducated.
Your vanity is ridiculous, your conduct an outrage, and your presence in my garden utterly absurd. However, you have got to catch the 4:05, and I hope you have a pleasant journey back to town. This bumbling, as you call it, has not been a great success for you.
Oh, I don't know. I think it's been a great success. I am in love with Cicely, and that is all that matters. I must see her again and make arrangements for another Bunbury as soon as possible. Ah, there she is.
Oh, I nearly came back to water the roses. I thought you were with Uncle Jack.
No, he's gone to order the dog cart for me.
Oh, is he going to take you for a nice drive?
No, he's going to send me away.
And you've got to part?
Yes. It's a very painful parting.
It is always painful to part from people whom one has known for a very brief space of time. The absence of old friends one can endure with equanimity. But even a momentary separation from anyone to whom one has just been introduced is almost unbearable.
Thank
The
you.
dog cart's at the door, sir.
It can wait, Merriman, for 5 minutes.
Oh, yes, miss.
I hope you won't be offended, Cicely, if I say that you seem to me to be, in every way, the visible personification of absolute perfection.
I think your frankness does you great credit, Ernest. If you will allow me, I will copy your remarks into my diary.
Did you really give a diary? I'd give anything to see it, may I?
Oh, no. You see, it is simply a very young girl's record of her own thoughts and impressions, and consequently meant for publication. When it appears in volume form, I hope you will order a copy. But pray, don't stop, Ernest. I have reached absolute absolute perfection. You can go on, I'm quite ready for more. Oh, don't cough, Ernest. When one's dictating, one should speak fluently and not cough. Besides, I don't know how to spell a cough.
Cicely, ever since I first looked upon your wonderful and incomparable beauty, I have dared to love you wildly, devotedly, passionately, hopelessly.
I don't think you should tell me that you love me wildly, passionately, devotedly, hopelessly. Hopelessly doesn't seem to make much sense, does it?
Cicely,
John can't. He's waiting, sir.
tell her to go around next week at the same hour.
Yes. Yes, sir.
Uncle Jack would be very much annoyed if he knew you were staying on till next week at the same hour.
I don't care about Jack. I don't care about anyone but you. You will marry me, won't you?
You silly boy! Of course! Why, we have been engaged for the last 3 months.
The last 3 months?
Yes, it'll be exactly 3 months on Thursday.
How did we become engaged?
Well, ever since dear Uncle Jack first confessed to us that he had a younger brother, who was very wicked and bad, you, of course, have formed the chief topic of conversation between myself and Miss Prism. And a man who's much talked about is always very attractive. One feels there must be something in him after all. I dare say it was foolish of me, but I fell in love with you, Ernest.
My darling, but when was our engagement actually settled?
On 14th of February last, worn out by your entire ignorance of my existence, I determined to end the matter one way or the other. And after a long struggle with myself, I accepted you under this dear old tree here. The next day, I bought this little ring in your name, and this is a bangle with the true lover's knot I promised you always to wear.
I buy you this. It's very pretty, isn't it?
Yes, you've wonderfully good taste, Ernest. It's the excuse I've always given for you leading such a bad life. And this is the box in which I keep all your dear letters.
My letters? But my dear Cicely, I've never written you any letters.
You need hardly remind me of that, Ernest. I remember only too well that I was forced to write your letters for you. I wrote always, 3 times a week, and sometimes oftener.
May I see them?
Oh no, I couldn't possibly. It would make you far too conceited. The 3 you wrote me after I had broken off our engagement are so beautiful and so badly spelled that even now I can hardly read them without crying a little.
But was our engagement ever broken off?
Of course it was. On the 22nd of last March. You can see the entry if you like. Today I broke off my engagement with Ernest. I feel it is better to do so. The weather still continues charming.
But why was our engagement broken off? What had I done? I hadn't done anything. Cicely, I'm very distressed to hear that our engagement was broken off, particularly when the weather was so charming.
It would hardly have been a really serious engagement if it hadn't been broken off at least once. But I forgave you before the week was out.
What a perfect angel you are.
You dear romantic boy. I hope your hair curls naturally, does it?
Yes, with the help of the others.
I'm so glad.
You'll never break off our engagement again now, will you?
I don't think I could break it off now that I've actually met you. Besides, of course, there is the question of your name.
Yes, of course.
You must not laugh at me, darling, but it has always been a girlish dream of mine to love someone whose name was Ernest. There is something in that name that seems to inspire absolute confidence. I pity any poor married woman whose husband is not called Ernest.
But, my darling, do you mean to tell me that you couldn't love me if I had some other name?
But what name?
Oh, I don't know. Algernon, perhaps?
But I don't like the name Algernon.
My dear, sweet, loving little darling, I don't see what you could object to about the name Algernon. It's a perfectly good name. A rather aristocratic name, in fact. Most of the chaps who end up in the bankruptcy court are called Algernon. Seriously, sweet Cicely, my name was Algie. Couldn't you love me?
I might respect you, Ernest. I might admire your character. But I feel that I should not be able to give you my undivided attention.
Cicely, your rector here, I trust, is practising all the rites and ceremonials of the church.
Oh, yes. Dr. Chasuble is a most learned man. He has never written a single book, so you can imagine how much he knows.
Then I must see him at once on the most important christening and the most important business.
Oh.
I shan't be gone more than half an hour.
Considering that we have been engaged since February the 14th, and that we only met today for the first time, I feel it is rather hard for you to leave me for so long a period as half an hour. Couldn't you make it 20 minutes?
I shall be back in no time.
What an impetuous boy he is. I like his hair so much. I must enter his proposal in my diary.
Miss Fairfax is called to see Mr. Worthing on important business, Miss Fairfax.
Isn't Mr. Worthing in his library?
No, Mr. Worthing went over to the rectory some time ago.
Pray ask the lady to come here. Mr. Worthing is sure to be back soon.
Yes, miss.
And you can bring tea.
Yes, miss.
Miss Fairfax. I suppose one of the many good elderly women who are associated with Uncle Jack in some of his philanthropic work in London. I don't quite like women who are interested in philanthropic work. I think it is so forward of them.
Miss Fairfax.
Pray, let me introduce myself to you. My name is Cicely Cardew.
Cicely Cardew. What a very sweet name. Something tells me we are going to be great friends. I like you already more than I can say. My first impressions of people are never wrong.
How nice of you to like me so much after we have known each other such a comparatively short time. Pray, sit down.
I may call you Cicely, may I not?
With pleasure.
And you will always call me Gwendolyn, won't you?
If you wish.
Then that is all quite settled, is it not?
I hope so.
Perhaps this may be a favourable opportunity for my mentioning who I am. My father is Lord Bracknell. You have never heard of Papa, I suppose.
I don't think so.
Outside the family circle. Papa, I am glad to say, is entirely unknown. I think that is quite as it should be. The home seems to me to be the proper sphere for the man, and certainly once a man begins to neglect his domestic duties, he becomes painfully effeminate, does he not? And I don't like that. It makes men so very attractive. Cicely, Mamma, whose views on education are remarkably strict, has brought me up to be extremely short-sighted. It is part of her system, so do you mind my looking at you through my glasses?
Oh, not at all, Gwendolyn. I am very fond of being looked at.
You are here on a short visit, I suppose?
Oh, no, I live here.
Really? Then your mother, no doubt, or some female relative of advanced years resides here also?
Oh, no, I have no mother, nor, in fact, any relations.
Indeed?
My dear guardian, with the assistance of Miss Prism, has the arduous task of looking after me.
Your guardian?
Yes, I am Mr. Worthing's ward.
Oh? It is strange. He never mentioned to me that he had a ward. How secretive of him. He grows more interesting hourly. I am not sure, however, that this news inspires me with feelings of unmixed delight. I am very fond of you, Cicely. I have liked you ever since I met you. But I am bound to state that now I know you are Mr. Worthing's ward, I cannot help expressing a wish that you were, well, just a little older than you seem to be. Not quite so very alluring in appearance. In fact, if I may speak candidly...
Pray do. I think that whenever one has anything unpleasant to say, one should always be quite candid.
Oh, to speak with perfect candour, Cicely, I wish that you were fully 42 and more than usually plain for your age. Ernest has a strong, upright nature. He is the very soul of truth and honour. Disloyalty would be as impossible to him as deception. But even men of the noblest possible moral character are extremely susceptible to the influence of the physical charms of others. Modern, no less than ancient history supplies us with many most painful examples of what I refer to. If it were not so, indeed, history would be quite unreadable.
I beg your pardon, Gwendolyn. Did you say Ernest?
Yes.
Oh, but it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is my guardian. It is his brother, his elder brother.
Ernest never mentioned to me that he had a brother.
I am sorry to say they have not been on good terms for a long time.
Oh, that accounts for it. And now that I think of it, I have never heard any man mention his brother. The subject seems distasteful to most men. Cicely, you have lifted a load from my mind. I was growing almost anxious. It would have been terrible if any cloud had come across a friendship like ours, would it not? Of course, you are quite certain that it is not Mr. Ernest Worthing who is your guardian?
Quite certain. In fact, I am going to be his...
Beg your pardon?
Dearest Gwendolyn, there is no reason why I should make a secret of it to you. Our little county newspaper is sure to chronicle the fact next week. Mr. Ernest Worthing and I are engaged to be married.
My darling Cicely, I think there must be some slight error. Mr. Ernest Worthing is engaged to me. The announcement will appear in the Morning Post on Saturday at the latest.
I'm afraid you are under some misconception. Ernest proposed to me exactly 10 minutes ago.
It is certainly very curious. He asked me to be his wife yesterday afternoon at 5:30. If you would care to verify the incident, pray do so. I never travel without my diary. One should always have something sensational to read in the train. I'm so sorry, dear Cicely, if it is any disappointment to you, but I'm afraid I have the prior claim.
It would cause me great distress if I knew I was causing you any physical anguish, Gwendolyn, but I feel bound to point out that since Ernest proposed to you, he clearly has changed his mind.
If the poor fellow has been entrapped into some foolish promise, I shall consider it my duty to rescue him at once, and with a firm hand.
Whatever unfortunate entanglement my dear boy may have got into, I will never reproach him with it after we are married.
Do you allude to me, Miss Cardew, as an entanglement? You are presumptuous. On an occasion of this kind, it becomes more than a moral duty to speak one's mind. It becomes a pleasure.
Do you suggest, Miss Fairfax, that I entrapped Ernest into an engagement? How dare you? This is no time for wearing the shallow mask of manners. When I see a spade, I call it a spade.
I am glad to say that I have never seen a spade. It is obvious our social spheres have been widely different.
Shall I like tea as usual, miss?
Yes, as usual.
Are there many interesting walks in the vicinity, Miss Cardew?
Oh yes, a great many. From the top of one of the hills quite close, one can see 5 counties.
5 counties? I don't think I should like that. I hate crowds.
I suppose that is why you live in town.
Quite a well-kept garden you have, Miss Cardew.
So glad you like it, Miss Fairfax.
I had no idea there were any flowers in the country.
Oh, flowers are as common here, Miss Fairfax, as people are in London.
Personally, I cannot understand how anybody manages to exist in the country. If anybody who is anybody does. The country always bores me to death.
Ah, this is what the newspapers call agricultural depression, is it not? I believe the aristocracy is suffering very much from it just at present. It is almost an epidemic amongst them, I have been told. May I offer you some tea, Miss Fairfax?
Thank you. Detestable girl. But I require tea.
Sugar?
No, thank you. Sugar is not fashionable anymore.
Cake or bread and butter?
Bread and butter, please. Cake is rarely seen at the best houses nowadays.
Hand back to Miss Fairfax.
You have filled my tea with lumps of sugar. And though I asked most distinctly for bread and butter, you have given me cake. I am known for the gentleness of my disposition and the extraordinary sweetness of my nature, but I warn you, Miss Cardew, you may go too far.
To save my poor, innocent, trusting boy from the machinations of any other girl, there are no lengths to which I would not go.
From the moment I saw you, I distrusted you. I felt you were false and deceitful. I am never deceived in such matters. My first impressions of people are invariably right.
It seems to me, Miss Fairfax, that I am trespassing on your valuable time. No doubt you have many other calls of a similar character to make in the neighbourhood. Ernest!
My own Ernest!
Gwendolyn, darling.
A moment. May I ask if you are engaged to be married to this young lady?
To dear little Cicely? Why, of course not. What could have put such an idea into your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I knew there must be some misunderstanding, Miss Fairfax. The gentleman whose arm is at present round your waist is my guardian, Mr. John Worthing.
I beg your pardon?
This is Uncle Jack.
Jack! Oh!
Here is Ernest.
My own love.
A moment, Ernest. May I ask, are you engaged to be married to this young lady?
To which young lady? Good heavens, Gwendolen!
Yes, good heavens, Gwendolen. I mean to Gwendolen.
Of course not. What could have such a silly idea in your pretty little head?
Thank you. You may.
I felt there must be some slight error, Miss Cardew. The gentleman who is currently embracing you is my cousin, Mr. Algernon Moncrief.
Algernon Moncrief? Oh! Is your name really Algernon?
I can't deny it.
Oh! Is your name really John?
I could deny it if I liked. I could deny anything if I liked. But my name certainly is John. It has been John for years.
The gross deception has been practised on both of us.
My poor, wounded Cicely.
My sweet robbed Gwendolen.
You will call me sister, will you not?
There is just one question I would like to be allowed to ask my guardian.
An admirable idea. Mr. Worthing, there is just one question I would like to be permitted to put to you. Where is your brother Ernest? We are both engaged to be married to your brother Ernest, so it is a matter of some importance to us to know where your brother Ernest is at present.
Gwendolen, Cicely, it's very painful for me to be forced to speak the truth. It is the first time in my life I've ever been reduced to such a painful position, and I am really quite inexperienced at doing anything of the kind. However, I will tell you frankly that I have no brother Ernest. I have no brother at all. I never had a brother in my life, and I certainly have not the smallest intention of ever having one in the future.
No brother at all?
None.
Had you never a brother of any kind?
Never. Not even of any kind.
I'm afraid it is quite clear, Cicely, that neither of us is engaged to be married to anybody.
It's not a very pleasant position for a young girl suddenly to find herself in, is it?
Let us go into the house. They will hardly dare to follow us there.
No. Men are so cowardly, aren't they?
This ghastly state of things is what you call bumbering, I suppose.
Yes. What a wonderful Bunbury it is. The most wonderful Bunbury I've ever had in my life.
Well, you have no right whatsoever to Bunbury here.
Oh, don't be absurd, Jack. One has the right to Bunbury wherever one chooses. Every serious Bunburyist knows that.
Serious Bunburyist? Good heavens.
One must be serious about something if one is to have any amusement in life. I happen to be serious about Bunburying. What you are serious about, I couldn't possibly imagine. About everything, I should wager.
Well,
You really do have the most trivial nature.
the only small satisfaction I have in the whole of this wretched business is that your friend Bunbury is quite exploded. You won't be able to run down to the country quite so often as you used to. And a very good thing, too.
Your brother is looking a little off colour, Jack. You won't be able to escape off to town as often as was your wicked custom. Not a bad thing either.
As for your conduct towards Miss Cardew, I think you're taking in a sweet, simple, innocent girl like that is quite inexcusable. Say nothing of the fact that she is my ward.
Well, I can see no excuse whatsoever in your deceiving a brilliant, clever, thoroughly experienced young lady as Miss Fairfax. Nothing to say of the fact that she is my cousin.
I wanted to be engaged to Gwendolen, that is all. I love her.
Well, I wanted to be engaged to Cicely, that's all. I adore her.
There is certainly no chance of your marrying Miss Cardew.
I don't think there's much chance of you and Miss Fairfax being united either, Jack.
That is no business of yours.
If it was my business, I wouldn't talk of it. Very vulgar to talk of one's business. Only stockbrokers and people like that do that sort of thing. And then only at dinner parties.
How you can calmly sit there eating muffins when we are in this horrible trouble, I can't make out. You seem to me to be perfectly heartless.
But I can hardly eat muffins in an agitated manner, can I? The butter would probably get on my cuffs. One must always eat muffins quite calmly. It is the only way to eat them.
I say it's perfectly heartless you eating muffins at all under the circumstances.
When I am unhappy, eating is the only thing that consoles me. In fact, when I am in really great trouble, I refuse, as anyone who knows me intimately will tell you, I refuse everything except food and drink. I am presently eating muffins because I am unhappy. Besides, I'm particularly fond of muffins.
Well, that is no reason why you should eat them all in that greedy way.
Oh, I do wish you'd have tea cake, Jack. I don't like tea cake.
Good heavens! I suppose a man may eat his own muffins in his own garden.
But you just said it was perfectly heartless to eat muffins.
I said it was perfectly heartless of you under the circumstances. That is a very different thing.
That may be, but the muffins are the same.
Oh, Algy! I wish to goodness you would go.
But I haven't had any dinner yet. I never go anywhere without my dinner. Nobody ever does, except for vegetarians and people like that. Besides, I've just made an appointment with Dr. Chasuble to be christened at 5:45 under the name of Ernest.
My dear fellow, the sooner you give up that nonsense, the better. I made arrangements this morning with Dr. Chasuble to be christened myself at 5:30, and I naturally will take the name of Ernest. Gwendolen would wish it. We can't both be christened Ernest, it's absurd. Besides, I have a perfect right to be christened if I like. There is no evidence at all that I was ever christened by anybody, and I think it extremely probable I never was. It's entirely different in your case. You have been christened already.
Yes, but I haven't been christened for years.
Yes, but you have been christened. That's the important thing.
Yes, so I know my constitution couldn't stand it. If you're not sure about ever having been christened, I think it's rather dangerous of you venturing on it now. It might make you rather unwell. You mustn't forget, someone very closely connected to you was nearly carried off by a severe chill yesterday.
You said so yourself. A severe chill was not hereditary.
It used to be, but science is making such wonderful advances in these things.
No, that is nonsense. You are always talking nonsense.
Jack, you're eating muffins again. I really wish you wouldn't. Look, there's only 2 left. And I told you I'm particularly fond of muffins.
But I hate tea cake.
Then why do you allow it to be served to your guests? What ideas you have of hospitality.
Algernon, I have already told you to go. I don't want you here. Why don't you go?
Because I haven't finished my tea yet. Besides, there's still 1 muffin left.
Into the house as anybody else would have done, seems to me to show that they have some sense of shame left.
They have been eating muffins. That looks like repentance.
They don't seem to notice us at all. Can you cough?
But I haven't got a cough.
They're looking at us. What effrontery!
They're approaching. That's very forward of them.
Let us preserve a dignified silence.
Certainly. It's the only thing to do now.
This dignified silence seems to produce an unpleasant effect.
A most distasteful one.
But we will not be the first to speak.
Certainly not.
Mr. Worthing, I have something very particular to ask you. Much depends on your reply.
Gwendolen, your common sense is invaluable. Mr. Moncrief, kindly answer me the following question. Why did you pretend to be my guardian's brother?
In order that I would have the opportunity of meeting you.
That certainly seems a satisfactory explanation, does it not?
Yes, dear, if you can believe him.
I don't. But that does not affect the wonderful beauty of his answer.
True. In matters of grave importance, style, not sincerity, is the vital thing. Mr. Worthing, what explanation can you offer me for pretending to have a brother? Was it in order that you might have an opportunity for coming up to town to see me as often as possible?
Can you doubt it, Miss Fairfax?
I have the gravest doubts upon the subject, but I intend to crush them. This is not the time for German scepticism. Their explanations appear to be quite satisfactory, especially Mr. Worthing's. That seems to me to have a stamp of truth upon it.
I am more than content with what Mr. Moncrief says. His voice alone inspires one with absolute credulity.
Then you think we should forgive them?
Yes. I mean, no.
True. I had forgotten. There are principles at stake that one cannot surrender. Which of us should tell them? The task is not a pleasant one.
Could we not both speak at the same time?
An excellent idea. I nearly always speak at the same time as other people. Will you take the time from me?
Certainly. Your Christian names are still an insuperable barrier. That is all.
Our Christian names? Is that all? But we are going to be christened this afternoon.
For my sake, you are prepared to do this terrible thing?
I am.
To please me, you are ready to face this fearful ordeal.
I am.
How absurd to speak of the equality of the sexes. Where matters of self-sacrifice are concerned, men are infinitely beyond us.
We are.
They have moments of physical courage of which we women know absolutely nothing.
Darling.
Darling.
Lady Bracknell.
Good heavens!
Gwendolen, what does this mean?
Merely that I'm engaged to be married to Mr. Worthing, Mamma.
Sit down immediately. Apprised, sir, of my daughter's trustee made by a sudden flight, by which I purchased by means of a small coin, I followed her at once on a luggage train. Her unhappy father is, I am pleased to say, under the impression she is attending a more than usually lengthy lecture by the University Extension Scheme. I do not propose to undeceive him. In fact, I have never undeceived him on any point. Consider it wrong. But you will clearly understand that any communication between your daughter and myself and herself will be impossible. On this point, as indeed on all points, I am firm.
But I am engaged to be married to Gwendolen, Lady Bracknell.
Nothing of the kind, sir. And now, as regards Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
Algernon, may I ask if it is in this house that your invalid friend, Mr. Bunbury, resides?
Bunbury? No. Bunbury is somewhere else at the moment. In fact, Bunbury is dead.
Dead? When did Mr. Bunbury die?
I killed Bunbury this afternoon. I mean, poor Bunbury died this afternoon.
What did he die of?
Bunbury? Oh, he was quite exploded.
Exploded? Was he the victim of a revolutionary outrage? I was not aware that Mr. Bunbury was interested in social legislation. If so, he was well punished for his morbidity.
My dear Aunt Augusta, what I mean is Bunbury was found out. I mean, the doctors found out that Bunbury could not live. So Bunbury died.
He seems to have had great confidence in the opinion of his physicians. However, I'm glad at the last he made up his mind and took action under proper medical advice. Now that we are finally rid of this Mr. Bunbury, may I ask Mr. Worthing, who is that young person whose hand my nephew was holding in what seems to me a peculiarly unnecessary manner?
That lady is Miss Cicely Cardew, my ward.
Cicely and I are engaged to be married, Aunt Augusta.
Beg your pardon?
Mr. Moncrief and I are engaged to be married, Lady Bracknell.
I do not know if there's anything peculiarly exciting in the air in this particular part of Hertfordshire. But the number of engagements that go on seem to me considerably above the proper average that statistics have laid down for our guidance. I feel some preliminary inquiry on my part might not be out of place. Mr. Worthing, is Miss Cardew at all connected with any of the larger railway stations? Merely desire information. Until yesterday, I had no idea that there were any families or persons whose origin was a terminus.
Miss Cardew is the granddaughter of the late Mr. Thomas Cardew of 149 Belgrade Square, SW, Gervais Park, Dorking, Surrey, and the stolen Fifeshire NB.
That sounds not unsatisfactory. 3 addresses always inspire confidence, even in tradesmen. But what proof do I have of their authenticity?
I have carefully preserved the court guides of the period. They are open to your inspection, Lady Bracknell.
Oh, I've known strange errors in that publication.
Miss Cardew's family solicitors are Messrs. Markby, and Markby.
Markby, and Markby. The firm of the highest position in their profession. Indeed, I'm told one of the Mr. Markbys is occasionally to be seen at dinner parties. So far, I am satisfied.
How extremely kind of you, Lady Bracknell. I have also in my possession, you will be pleased to hear, certificates of Miss Cardew's birth, baptism, whooping cough, registration, vaccination, confirmation, and the measles, both the German and the English variety.
Life-packed with incidents, I see, but perhaps somewhat too exciting for a young girl. I'm not myself in favour of premature experiences. Come, Gwendolen, the time approaches for our departure. We have not a moment to lose. As a matter of form, Mr. Worthing, I'd better inquire. Miss Cardew's only a little fortune.
Oh, about £130,000 in the funds, that is all. Goodbye, Lady Bracknell. So pleased to have seen you.
I know this, Mr. Worthing. £130,000 and in the funds. Miss Cardew seems to be a very attractive young lady now. Few girls of the present day have any of the really solid qualities. Qualities that improve and last for time. We live, I regret to say, in an age of surfaces. Come down here, dear. Your dress is sadly simple, and your hair much as nature might have left it. But we can soon alter all that. A thoroughly experienced French maid produces the most marvellous result in a relatively short space of time. I remember recommending one to young Lady Lansing, and after 3 months her own husband did not know her.
And after 6 months, nobody knew her.
Kindly turn around, dear. The side view is what I want. Quite as I expected. There are distinct social possibilities in your profile. Chin a little higher, dear. Style largely depends on how the chin is worn. They are all very high just at present. Algernon.
Yes, Aunt Augusta?
There are distinct social possibilities in Miss Cardew's profile.
Cicely is the sweetest, dearest, prettiest girl in the whole world, and I don't give tuppence about social possibilities.
Never speak disrespectfully of society, Algernon. Only people who can't get into it do that. You must know by now, dear, that Algernon has nothing but his debt to depend on. But I do not believe in mercenary marriages. Before I married Lord Bracknell, I had no fortune of any kind. But I never dreamt for a moment to allow that to stand in my way. Well, I suppose I must give my consent.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Cicely, you may kiss me.
Thank you, Lady Bracknell.
You may also address me as Aunt Augusta for the future.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
The marriage, I think, had better take place quite soon.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
Thank you, Aunt Augusta.
To speak frankly, I'm not in favour of long engagements. They give people the opportunity of finding out each other's characters before marriage, which I think is never advisable.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you, Lady Bracknell, but this engagement is quite out of the question. Miss Cardew is my ward. I am a guardian, and she cannot marry without my consent until she comes of age. That consent I absolutely decline to give.
Upon what grounds, may I ask? Algernon is an extremely, one might say, almost ostentatiously eligible young man. He has nothing, but he looks everything. What can one desire?
It pains me very much to have to speak frankly to Lady Bracknell about your nephew. But the fact is, I do not approve at all of his moral character. I suspect him of being untruthful.
Untruthful? My nephew, Algernon, truthful? Impossible. He is an Oxonian.
I fear there can be no possible doubt about the matter. This afternoon, during my temporary absence in London on an important question of romance, he obtained admission to my house by means of the false pretense of being my brother. Under an assumed name he drank, I have just been informed by my butler, an entire pint bottle of my Perrier-Jouet Brut 89 wine I was specially reserving for myself. Continuing his disgraceful deception, he succeeded in the course of the afternoon in alienating the affections of my only ward. He subsequently staked tea and devoured every single muffin. And what makes his conduct all the more heartless is, he was very well aware from the first that I have no brother, that I never had a brother, and that I don't intend to ever have a brother, not even of any kind. I distinctly told him so myself yesterday afternoon.
After careful consideration, I have decided entirely to overlook my nephew's conduct to you.
That is very generous of you, Lady Bracknell. My own decision, however, is unalterable. I decline to give my consent.
Come here, sweet child. How old are you, dear?
Well, I am really only 18, but I always admit to 20 when I go to evening parties.
You are perfectly right in making some slight alteration. Indeed, no woman should ever be quite accurate about her age. It looks so calculating. 18, but admitting to 20 evening parties. Well, it will not be long before you are of age and free from the restrictions of tutelage. So I don't think your guardian's consent is, after all, a matter of any importance.
I beg your pardon for interrupting you again, Lady Bracknell, but according to the terms of her grandfather's will, Miss Cardew does not come legally of age until she is 35.
I do not see that to be a grave objection. 35 is a very attractive age. London society is full of women of the very highest birth who, of their own free choice, have remained 35 for years. Lady Dumbledon is an instance in point. To my own knowledge, she has been 35 ever since she arrived at the age of 40. That was many years ago now. I see no reason why our dear Miss Cardew should not be just as attractive at the age you mentioned she is at present. There will be a large accumulation of property.
Algie, could you wait for me till I was 35?
Of course I could. You know I could.
Yes, I felt it instinctively. But I couldn't wait all that time. I hate waiting even 5 minutes for anybody. It always makes me rather cross. I am not punctual myself, I know, but I do like punctuality in others. And waiting, even to be married, is quite out of the question.
Then what is to be done?
I don't know, Mr. Moncrief.
My dear Mr. Worthing, as Miss Cardew states positively that she cannot wait until she is 35, a remark which I am bound to say shows a somewhat impatient nature. I would beg of you to reconsider your decision.
My dear Lady Bracknell, the matter is entirely in your own hands. The moment you consent to my marriage with Gwendolen, I would most gladly allow your nephew to form an alliance with my ward.
You must be quite aware that what you say is completely out of the question.
Their passionate celibacy is all any of us can look forward to.
That is not the destiny I propose for Gwendolen. Algernon, of course, can choose for himself. Come, dear, we have already missed 5 of the 6 trains. Don't lose any more. I dispose us to comment on the platform.
Everything is quite ready for the christenings.
Christening, sir? Is that not somewhat premature?
Both these gentlemen have expressed a desire for immediate baptism.
Their age? The idea is grotesque and irreligious. Algernon, I forbid you to be baptized. I will not permit such excesses. Lord Bracknell would be highly displeased if he found out this was how you spent your time and money.
Am I to understand, then, that there are to be no christenings at all this afternoon?
I don't think, as things are now, it would be of much practical value to either of us, Dr. Chasuble.
I am grieved to hear such sentiments from you, Mr. Worthing. They savour of the heretical views of the Anabaptists. Views that I have completely refuted in 4 of my unpublished sermons. However, as your present mood seems to be one peculiarly secular, I will return to the church at once. Indeed, I have just been informed by the pew opener that for the past hour and a half, Miss Prism has been waiting for me in the vestry.
Miss Prism? Did I hear you mention a Miss Prism?
Yes, Lady Bracknell. I am on my way to join her.
Pray allow me to detain you for one moment. This matter might be of vital importance to Lord Bracknell and myself. Is this Miss Prism a female of repellent aspect, remotely connected with education?
She is the most cultivated of ladies, and the very picture of respectability.
It is obviously the same one. Which position she holds in your household?
I am a celibate, madam.
Miss Prism, Lady Bracknell, has been for the last 3 years Miss Cardew's esteemed governess and valued companion.
In spite of what I hear of her, I must see her at once. Let her be sent for.
She approaches. She is nigh.
I was told you expected me in the vestry, dear Canon. I've been waiting for you there for 1 hour and 3/4.
Prism! Come here, Prism. Prism, where is that baby? 28 years ago, Prism, you left Lord Bracknell's house, number 104 Upper Grosvenor Street, in charge of a perambulator containing a baby of the male sex. You never returned. A few weeks later, through the elaborate investigations of the Metropolitan Police, the perambulator was discovered at midnight, standing by itself in a remote corner of Bayswater. It contained the manuscript of a 3-volume novel of more than usually revolting sentimentality. But the baby was not there. Prism, where is that baby?
Lady Bracknell, I admit, with shame, that I do not know. I only wish I did. The plain facts of the case are these. On the morning of the day that you mention, a day that is forever branded in my memory, I prepared as usual to take the baby out in its perambulator. I had with me also a somewhat old but capacious handbag in which I had intended to place the manuscript of a work of fiction that I had written in my few unoccupied hours. In a moment of mental abstraction for which I can never forgive myself, I placed the manuscript in the bassinet and the baby in the handbag.
But where did you deposit the handbag?
Do not ask me, Mr. Worthing.
Miss Prism, this is a matter of no small importance to me. I must insist on knowing where you deposited the handbag that contained that infant.
I left it in the cloakroom of one of the larger railway stations in London.
What railway station?
Victoria, a Bragton man.
I must retire to my room for a moment. Gwendolen, wait here for me.
If you are not too long, I will wait here for you all my life.
What do you think this means, Lady Bracknell?
I dare not even suspect, Dr. Chasuble. I need hardly remind you that in families of high position, strange coincidences are not supposed to occur. They are hardly considered the thing.
Uncle Jack seems strangely agitated.
Your guardian has a very emotional nature.
This noise is extremely unpleasant. He sounds as if he's having an argument. I dislike arguments of any kind. They are always vulgar and often convincing.
It has stopped now.
I wish he would come to some conclusion.
The suspense is terrible. I hope it will last.
Is this the handbag, Miss Prism? Examine it carefully before you speak. The happiness of more than one life depends on your answer.
Well, it certainly seems to be mine. Oh, yes. Here is the injury it received through the upsetting of a Gower Street omnibus in younger and happier days. Oh, and here is the stain on the lining caused by the explosion of a temperance beverage, an incident that occurred at Leamington. Oh, and here on the lock are my initials. I'd forgotten that in an extravagant mood I'd had them placed there. The bag is undoubtedly mine. I'm delighted to have it so unexpectedly returned to me. It's been a terrible inconvenience being without it all these years.
Miss Prism, more is restored to you than this handbag. I was the baby you placed in it.
You?
Yes! Mother! Unmarried. I do not deny that is a serious blow. But after all, who may cast a stone against one who has suffered? Cannot repentance wipe out an act of folly? Why should there be one law for men and another for women? Mother, I forgive you.
Mr. Worthing, there is some error. There is the lady that can tell you who you truly are.
Lady Bracknell, I hate to seem inquisitive, but would you kindly inform me as to who I am?
I am afraid the news I have to give you will not altogether please you. You are the son of my poor sister, Mrs. Moncrief, and consequently Algernon's elder brother.
Algy's elder brother? Then I have a brother after all! I always knew I had a brother! Cicely, how could you have doubted I ever had a brother? Oh, Dr. Chasuble, my unfortunate brother! Miss Prism, my unfortunate brother! Gwendolyn, my unfortunate brother! You young scoundrel, Algy! You will have to treat me with more respect in the future. You have never behaved to me like a brother in all your life.
Well, not until today, I admit. It's my best, but I'm afraid I was rather out of practice.
My own? But what own are you? What is your Christian name now that you have become somebody else?
Good heavens, I quite forgot that point. Your decision on the subject of my name is irrevocable, I suppose.
I never change, except in my affections.
What a noble nature you have, Gwendolyn.
Aunt Augusta, a moment. At the time Miss Prism left me in the handbag, had I been christened already?
Every luxury that money could buy, including christening, was lavished on you by your fond and doting parents.
And then I was christened, that is settled. What name was I given? Let me know the worst.
Being the eldest son, you were naturally christened after your father.
Yes, but what was my father's Christian name?
I can not at the present moment recall what General's Christian name was. I've no doubt he had one. He was eccentric, I admit, but only in later years. And that was a result of the Indian climate, and marriage, indigestion, and things of that kind.
Algy, can't you recollect what our father's Christian name was?
We were never on speaking terms, old boy. He died before I was a year old.
His name would appear in the army list of that period, I suppose, Aunt Augusta?
The general was essentially a man of peace, except in his domestic life. But I've no doubt his name would appear in any military directory.
The army lists of the last 40 years are here. Oh, these delightful records should have been my constant study. Generals. Malum, Maxbohm, Magley, what ghastly names they have. Markby, Migsby, Mobbs, Moncrief. Lieutenant, 1840. Captain, Lieutenant Colonel, Colonel, General, 1869. Christian names. Ernest, John. I told you, Gwendolyn, didn't I, that my name was Ernest? Well, it is Ernest after all. I mean, it naturally is Ernest.
I remember now that the general was called Ernest. I knew I had a particular reason to dislike the name.
Ernest, my own Ernest. I felt from the first you could have no other name.
Dear Gwendolyn, it is a terrible thing for a man to find out suddenly that all his life he has been speaking nothing but the truth. Can you forgive me?
I can, for I feel you are sure to change.
My own one.
Lie, Titia?
Frederick! At last.
Cicely, at last.
Gwendolyn, at last.
My nephew, you seem to be displaying signs of triviality.
On the contrary, Aunt Augusta, I've now realized for the first time in my life the vital importance of being earnest.